Hello, and welcome to the Construct 2 Academy. My name is Ed, and today we're going to talk about how to make a beat-em-up game with Construct 2. Today's key learning points will be the custom movement behavior, the scroll to behavior, the 8-direction behavior, and functions. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so here we are in Construct 2. As usual, I have everything set up in its simplest form. So we have our layers, HUD, game, and background. I have my background image, which right now is just a sprite that was taken from an arcade game called Golden Axe, so please do not use that in any commercial projects. We have our player, and our player has a set of animations that are already set up. Alright, we have idle, walk, attack, and jump. And same goes with our enemy. We have walk, attack, hit, dead. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and set up our first couple of things here. Both our player and our enemy both need the pin behavior. So let's go ahead and add those to each of them. Okay, and each player, or our player and our enemy, are also going to use empty sprite as their collision. And the reason Skira recommends that you do this is with an animated sprite, your collisions can get a little wonky when it's trying to collide with each frame of that animation, whereas if you just use a square sprite, the collisions work much better. So let's create one for our hero, and let's go ahead and call this our player shadow. Alright, and I want it to be kind of right down there by his feet. Something like that. Okay. And this object we want to go ahead and give the 8 direction, because that's how we're going to move our player around the screen. And we're also going to give it the bound to layout, so he cannot leave the screen. Okay, and on our 8 direction, we want his speed to be 100. Acceleration and deceleration are just going to be really high numbers, so there is neither of those. He's going to move in 8 directions. He's not going to rotate. And we do not want to use the default controls because we want to do some modifications to those. So let's set that to no, and initial state is enabled. Okay, and the other thing we're going to do with our shadow is we're going to give him 2 instance variables. The first one is going to be the direction that he's walking, and that's going to be a text, and it's going to default to the right. And the second one is going to be state. And this is going to be what state the player is in, and this is going to default to idle. Oops. Okay. Now we go over to our event sheet, and as usual, we want to start out with our on start of layout. And the first thing we want to do is we want to pin our player to the shadow. Okay. Okay, and then we also want to take our player shadow and we want to make this invisible so that you can't see it while you're playing. That's going to be hidden in the background. Okay, so now that we have that simple stuff set up, let's go ahead and set up the controls for our player. So in order to do that, we're going to need our keyboard. Let's go ahead and create a group called controls, just to keep everything nice and tidy. And let's add a sub-event and keyboard. And on key is down. And we're going to use the right key. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and go to our shadow, and we're going to simulate a control of pressing right. Okay, and then we're also going to take our shadow, the instance variable that we set of the direction, and we're going to change this to the right. We're going to go ahead and change his animation of our player to the walk animation. And then when he's walking to the right, he's not going to be mirrored. So let's take our player. We're going to set mirrored to not mirrored. And then lastly, we want to set our speed of our movement to 100. Okay, and we're basically going to do the exact same thing for our left movement. So I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to change this to the left arrow. I'm going to simulate pressing left. I'm going to set my direction to left. Animation is still going to be walk. I'm now going to be mirrored. And my speed is going to be the same. Okay, and then the up arrow is going to be very similar. And key is down. Pressing up. We are going to simulate. Oops. On the shadow, I want to simulate pressing up. Okay, and I also want to show the walking animation. And again, we can copy and paste this for down. So when my down arrow is down, I'm going to simulate pressing down and set my animation to walk. Okay, and then finally, on my keyboard, if any key is released, meaning I'm not pressing any keys, oops, this has to be in there, then I want to set my animation to idle. Okay, so there's our basic movement. And let's go ahead and set up a camera real quick since we don't currently have a camera. What's going to happen right now is this dotted line is our window. But as you can see, our layout is way down here. So if we go ahead and run this, we won't be able to see anything. We're going to be up in that area up here in this window. So what we have to do is we got to create a camera that we can attach to our shadow that will follow it around. Now the easiest way of doing that is just creating adding the scroll to behavior to our shadow. But we're not going to use that. We're actually going to create a camera from scratch. And I'll explain that a little bit later as to why we're going to do this. But for now, let's just create a sprite. Oops. Alright, and let's name it camera. And we're going to add the scroll to behavior to our camera here. Okay, and let's go ahead and stick this, I don't know, like right here for now is fine. Right there is fine. Okay, we want to make our camera invisible as well. Alright. And let's go back to our event sheet and let's create a group called camera. And we're going to add one sub event in here. We're going to use every tick. We want to set the position of our camera. Okay, now this is going to look a little tricky, but we're going to use the lerp expression. And what lerp means is it's a linear interpolation. So instead of just going from point A to point B in like one frame, and you just see that skip of being from X, like say you're being at X100 to being X400 and it just instantly pops over to 400, lerp is going to allow it to move over that distance per tick in in kind of a nice smooth fashion. Okay, so our X is going to be lerp, and then self X, which is the X of the camera. You could put camera X, and our player dot X. And then for X, we're going to use 0.0302. Okay, and for our Y, we're going to do something similar. Lerp self.y player.y 0.03. Okay, and that should give us a nice smooth motion of our camera as we move. Okay, see how the screen kind of follows him? It just doesn't instantly snap to him as he moves. It kind of catches up with him a little bit. Okay, that's if we just use scroll 2, when he would just move with the screen would move the same speed as him. Okay, but by using lerp, we can kind of give it that vision that he's moving a little bit faster than the camera, and the camera catches up with him. Okay, now one other thing you notice is we can just keep walking up, and we definitely don't want to do that. So we can add in a little event here, checking for the Y of our shadow, and let's just test it at 380. So if Y is less than or equal to 380, we want to go ahead and set our Y to 380. Okay, now remember, in Construct 2, the 0, point is up here. So Y0 is up here. So we want to check if he's less than 280. So it's about right there right now. That's probably pretty good because we have these little rocks coming up over here, and we don't want to walk into those. So that's perfect right there, 380. Okay, and you can see I can't move any further up from right there. So that's a good way to just limit where you can walk, because I already have bound to layout, so he can't walk out left and right. But now he can't walk up past the screen as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get our player to attack. So first off, I'm going to create a group that's called player, just to stay organized. I'm going to drop my player stuff in here. Okay, now up under controls, I'm going to add a sub event to my group. And on keyboard, on key pressed, and let's use the Z key to attack. So on Z pressed, I'm going to change my player's animation to attack. And let's run that real quick and see what happens. So you see, if I just tap Z, his animation doesn't finish. But if I hold it down, it actually does. Okay? And if I'm moving around, I can't attack at all. And the reason this is happening is right here, we have this on any key released, go back to the idle animation. So as soon as I tap Z and release it, it goes back to the idle animation. Whereas if I'm holding these down and pressing Z, these are going to override it because I'm holding them down. Okay? So what we need to do is, if you remember on our player shadow, we created this instance variable for a state. And this actually, my mistake, this should be a text, not a number. And we're going to default it to idle. Let's go ahead and make that change real quick. So we have this state where he is idle when he starts off. Okay, and what we want to do is when we attack, we also want to set our state to attacking. Okay, so this lets the system know that our player is attacking. So what we can do is on this event, we can add another condition, and we can check this instance variable, and we can say if our state is not equal to attacking, then we can go ahead and go back to idle. But if I'm in the process of attacking, then I don't want to go into the idle. Okay? And then we also want to go ahead and do that on all of these other events too. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste that into each one of my other arrow keys. Okay, because the other thing is with these games is I don't want him to move and attack at the same time. Okay, so I want him to pause when I attack. So by doing this, I'm not going to be able to move while I'm attacking as well. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we got. There we go. But see, now he gets stuck in the attack animation and I can't move because we're never setting it back to something else. Okay. Okay, so what we need to do is to tell it when to set our state back to idle. And that's easy. What we want to do is on our player, animation finished, and animation is attack. Then we want to set our state back to idle. Okay, so until that animation is finished, we can't start moving again. So let's go ahead and run that. There we go, we attack, and then we're moving again. All right? Perfect. So as this will advance on, we may want to change his state to walking when he's actually walking. If we need some conditions in there where we need to check for that. Right now we don't, so we're just going to leave it at that. All right, he go ahead and attacks, and let's go ahead and drop this into our player group as well. So that's going to conclude the introduction to creating a beat 'em up game. We've got our player movement, we've got him attacking, and we've got a custom camera setup. So in the next part, we're going to go ahead and set up a zone that when we get to a zone, it's going to stop the scrolling of the camera. It's going to lock us into that zone. And then we'll have an enemy appear that we will attack. And when he is cleared from the screen, it's going to open up the zone back up and allow us to continue on to the right. So stay tuned for the next part of this coming up soon. All right, take care.